Hello, I am Mads Pearson. I am a creative writing and graphic design major at SUNY Oswego, and I'm also the student editor-in-chief for Subnivean. So, as most of you know, or as I will inform you if you don't, Subnivean is an adjective meaning situated or transpiring under the snow, a noun denotating a subnivean zone offering warmth and shelter, and now also a noun meaning a publication that the community of literary magazines and presses has named as one of the 4 finalists for the National 2021 Firecracker Award in the category of Best Magazines, Best Debut. Subnivean's editorial mission is to curate and produce bone-deep, high-caliber literary art that speaks urgently to an ever more connected international audience. And we are now read all over the globe in more than 50 countries. In fact, authors in the Ukraine, Brazil, and Myanmar just joined the party, submitting manuscripts in our current reading period. And we have just had the chance to read manuscripts sent in by writers living in every US state but one. If anyone's from North Dakota, get with the program. Send us some beautiful poetry or fiction. We want to read it. Anyhow, just as tonight's event is offered free, Subnivean will never charge readers for full access to our issues. And my fellow members of our hardworking SUNY Oswego undergraduate staff are nose to grindstone right now, preparing for issue 6, in which we will all formally announce to Mr. Herrera and Mr. Handler's winners of the Subnivean Awards in poetry and fiction to the world. But y'all are going to know before the rest of the world, because tonight we are excited to introduce to you the 7 finalists and to the fabulous final judges who will share their thoughts on writing and life and favorite ice cream flavors and name the winners in each category. You may have heard of them. U.S. Poet Laureate Emeritus Juan Felipe Herrera, and weird wild author you may also know as Lemony Snicket, the indomitable Daniel Handler. Due to an unexpected travel complication affecting one of our guests, we've switched up our program to kick things off with the reading by our 7 Subnivean Awards finalists, whose work Mr. Herrera and Mr. Handler have had the incredibly difficult task of judging.
Thank you, Mads. Hi, everyone. I'm Angel Hall, and I'm happy to be hosting tonight with Mads. This will be recorded, so all the people who contacted us to say, I want to come, but I'm working, can watch later on. By the way, I'm a creative writing and communications major myself and fiction editor for Subnivean. So I was very involved in helping to select the unforgettable finalist poems and stories you'll hear, and it's such a treat to finally meet the authors who wrote them, as well as our celebrity judges. In Mr. Herrera's words, the 7 finalists are all winners with big minds and keen thinking, language fires and experiment, profound questions, and philosophical concerns. They are New World seers and world prophets. I can't wait to hear their work. I also want to add that by registering for this event tonight, you've been automatically entered into a raffle to win fantastic prizes from another literary publication here on campus, the Great Lake Review, a long-standing publication that's been around since 1974, a long time, staffed entirely by students. In fact, if you're local, we'll post a link to the Great Lake Review's Facebook page so you can join them May 5th at the Rivers End Bookstore for a release party celebrating their 92nd issue. In fact, to warm up the mic so we can get ready to Like a Baby at Bedtime by the finalist authors, I'd like to introduce their nonfiction editor, superstar, creative writer, and SUNY Oswego student, Alexis Santos. For those of you who haven't had the experience of reading your work for a crowd, it can be nerve-wracking to go first. So Alexis has offered to be our sacrificial first reader. Ready, Alexis? Let's do it.
Yeah, it is kind of nerve-wracking reading first, but I was up for the challenge from the start, and I'm so excited to be here. And there's not as much pressure for me because I'm not a finalist or anything. I'm just here to share my work with you guys. So a poem I would like to share with you is one that means a lot to me. It's about my grandmother. It's called Where Esmeralda Sings. And I think I'll just get right into it. I think I have a Honduran grandfather. He carried my dad on his back across a river and left him on the other side for the fish to feed on. They would eat away at anything that looked like cowardice until he was a castaway bottle formed of sea glass. So now I can put into my eye when I want to see what it means to be a man with the morals of a Mayan sea catfish. My dad is a bottle formed of sea glass, and there are forgotten Honduran cities all down his neck, like Yoro. That's where small silver fish fall from the sky during monsoons, and people turn their umbrellas inside out if they have families to feed. I look out through my father, and from the bottom, past the city of raining fish, and past the gold rings of his mother's left hand that clink and clank inside him when he's shaken good enough, and past the green mountain iguanas being turned on a spit roast. From the glass bottom of my father, I see my grandfather's back as he crossed the river home.
Okay, thank you, Alexis. That was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Very,
I
very
much enjoyed. I love poetry. Okay. So now we get to kick off our fabulous finalists after that amazing reading from Alexis. So first up, we have another laureate with us tonight. Artemisio Romero Y Carver is a Miller Scholar, Young Arts Merit Award winner for spoken word, and Santa Fe's 2020 Youth Poet Laureate. Arte's poems have been in the Inlandia Literary Journal, Rigorous Literary Journal, Magma Poetry, and elsewhere. She studies at Washington University in St. Louis.
Hi, thank you all for this opportunity and the chance to read a poem. I'm gonna start with what I think is like a relatively fun one. Also, it's about New York, so that feels like regionally relevant. It's kind of about New York. It's called my second 4th of July poem. This city, her city, is a drum kit, somehow fit into a dishwasher and then set to heavy timed metal ringing. Your canyon was round like a body, a simile that is effectively coherent in the Upper East Side, but she doesn't like when you call New England quaint, a trick that you learned from your dad, who also told you before you left for the summer. You'll know a true preppy by how he immediately insults you with something arguably ironic and feigned. And so dad said, in turn, to be violently earnest. And so now you do that with maybe too much zeal. And so then she takes you aside at the upstate lake that seems to you a beach to tell you, sweetheart, you shouldn't have escalated that. Which is funny because you wonder the same thing in a different way when you stop trying to tell her about the mountains or your ancestors, which in this context are synonyms, as she asks you very reasonably to not position yourself like a visiting professor at luncheon while she shows you her favorite part of the museum, the birds, and what you know to be a future teapot memory, meaning a moment that in some later morning will scream at you and evaporate. I'd like to give you all one second poem. It is Watch Me Attempt to Extend Empathy to the Tourist. I don't succeed. If a ritual is a means of time travel, then picking these red currants is my ritual. There's no blood on my hands now, just juice. If a souvenir is a means of arresting time, then her name is a souvenir that I can say is if I still have a reason to, I can word myself in such a way that I am not alone tonight. In the same way, I can mark his grave, verbally and at a safe distance from that mud brick church that they might call primitive, where my brave uncle, whom they might call an addict, had eulogized his mother. If tradition is a common habit between generations, then assimilation has been our tradition, a literally self-effacing inheritance, what the Spanish called blood mending. If opiates are a means of using the material to change the spirit, then Brujeria is a means of using the spirit to change the material, and a spell is a poem aimed. Thank you all.
That was really beautiful poetry. Thank you so much. Our second of 3 finalist poets, Moni Brar, was born in rural India, raised in British Columbia, and now lives as a settler on the unceded terrace of the Treaty 7 region, Calgary. She has multiple Pushcart Prize and the best of the net nominations. Earned the 2021 SAG Arts Writing Prize and was a runner-up in Prism International's Grouse Grand Prize. Her writing appears in Literary Review of Canada, Prairie Fire, The New Quarterly, Passages North, and Hobart, among others, and we'll put her Insta handle in the chat so you can learn more.
Great, thank you, Angel, for the introduction. It's an honor to be here amongst all of you. The first poem I'm going to read is called After the Aftermath of Text. There are a few dots begging to be connected, to be sewn together into a form-fitting suit that's snug in all the right places. One that can be smoothed down with the blunt swipe of the palm. For an outsider, that is the allure of suits, to step into something that can wrest the self into being an insider with the help of a zipper. He remembers those days in Toronto when he lived with 3 men in a one-room box, reeking of despair and fried onions. Those days with 1 pot to cook rice in, then wash, then cook runny dal in, then eat out of with 4 dented spoons. Extra salt to hide the absence of cumin and mustard seeds. Dal and rice every day. Dal, rice, dal, rice, dal, rice as the months, then years bled together. Those days when his roommate would ask for a quarter with a lump in his throat the size of a fist. A quarter for a bus ride to look for work, a steady train of days and quarters. And then they scattered. Where did that one go? Did he earn many quarters? I know where this one went. West across the Canadian Shield, then north to pine forests and pulp mills, hard hats and hard hate. On Tracy Street, we picked rocks from an empty field. Piles became mountains that blocked the sun. We didn't know if that was part of the plan. We cut down the plum trees and giant oak and flattened the earth. We filled every crevice with fertile hope, lit incense, and willed crops to grow. When Father was away, we'd listen to Blondie, sway in the living room with our crooked bodies, momentarily happy and rock free. Color me your color, baby, knuckling its way into our heads. The sheer heft of your anglicized tongue requires no apology. Your friend worries about your soul, though, so she takes you to church, seats you in the front pew, tells you how progressive her pastor is. Progressive. He's in black jeans, popped collar, leather belt with the perfect patina. His eyes shine with devotion. You don't tell her about Kevin, Ryan, and Jean calling you a heathen, not behind your back, but to your face, since they're good Christian boys teeming with noblesse oblige, speaking God's truth, singular in their conviction, their fear of hybridity. You don't tell her you prefer the Gurdwara to church, its bang up noise and audacious colors, where everyone means something. You don't tell her how relieved you are when you learn the word patricide, that there is a word for what you dream of. Hush, there is no shoulder for you to cry on. You are a lone wolf gone rabid. There's nothing to embank this endless metamorphosis. It's bound to spill over and swirl at your ankles. Stop reacting when they confuse culture and language and religion and ethnicity and all those fragments of other. Stop reacting when they ask you if you're Hindi. Maybe you are only language. And I'd like to read a second poem for you. And this poem, it is in honor of Parmjeet and other women whose lives were cut short due to religious violence. It's called Woman as Tractor as God Too. I envision your departure as fierce, that you ran headlong into his hate, that you were ruthless. Like Varuna, you were the punisher, that you drove your body machine into the soft dark, into the rose of green vigor, past empty nests teetering on corroded wire, that you bound soil to sea to sky, upending ripe decay and bled soil. I dream you were unforgiving as a swallow diving to its death. Like Kali, you were the demon, as you plowed through this soft earth, seeded your love in its loam and the soft skin of voles, your metallic might, pistoned fury, dragging the scent of sandalwood to the earth's crimson core, devouring the Egypt honor that outweighed your short life. Thank you for listening, everyone.
That was amazing. If this were like in a room, everyone would be snapping. I can hear it now. And our penultimate poet this evening is Lauren Holguin. She is a Mexican-American educator and a multi-genre writer of stories from Los Angeles. She writes English language arts curriculum for New Jersey and Miami schools and is an assistant poetry editor for Barrow House magazine. Her work has been featured recently in Zines via Philadelphia collective Blue Stoop and the Philadelphia Contemporary, and recorded live at Kelly Writer's house with WXPN. We'll add her Insta and Twitter handles to the chat as well. And I'll hand it over to Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Holguin. I'm gonna stand. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm gonna read one long poem, and forgive my voice, it's kind of going. Thank you, Subnivean, by the way, and everybody for helping publish some of these poems for me. I never thought they would see anywhere else, so thank you. This is called Breaking Ground at 7th and Clinton. Golden shovels wait in dirt piles. The kid who asks me, when's lunch? The mayor finishes his speech, para los niños, gracias. Teachers demand clap in the ears of our kids. I try a y'all too cool, my signal that it's time to get funky and to clap, 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 clap your hands. They scoff, smile at my bad rhythm, and we slide our way onto stage. We right foot, let's stomp. We left foot, let's stomp. We cha-cha, real cool, asked to sing our best PG remix trap song in blue uniforms, turning darker blue in splotches under the yellow sky to proclaim all we do in life is win, win, win. And nobody's gonna hold us down. Everybody best believe nobody's gonna stop us now. Cha-cha again. We point down as we shout it, stomp the earth as we shout it. We'll go to college to get that knowledge. I'll be what I plan to be, anything, wait and see. I'll be a doctor, lawyer, a psychiatrist, architect, pastry chef, marine biologist. Eloquent news anchors said we looked fierce. Take it back now, y'all. On the way, we passed orange, red, black X's every other house, decorating the spots where ghosts whisper. Next to a muddy closed lot, a broken glass cat alley. Overgrown so far, y'all, Kid A barely remembered. Oh yeah, my grandma used to live there. Shaking a magic 8-ball, as I recall the still face down, barefooted, naked woman and how we'd both grown teary-eyed with no words in that same spot. Kid A asks, will I have a Lamborghini? We wait to see. Kid B spots one of those ugly yellow dandelions that grows between concrete and says nothing but goes to grab. Kid C, don't pick it, it's a sunflower. Kid D, we need it because it's beautiful, stupid. Kid A does an open neck, no respect, but misses and hits Kid D in the head instead. Reverse, reverse. We are now walking from the park on potholeless yellow brick roads with a dirty shovel and a pile of gold in a land of magic 8-ball prophecies come true. Our reversed neighborhood, where the only Mickey D's bags are designer Jeremy Scott's, where every kid's mom and dad and grandmas and grandpas and aunties and uncles, tios, tias, sisters, brothers, cousins, and friends are living happily together in McMansions, and each one has a Lambo. Where every Mickey D's bag are designer Jeremy Scott's. The X's on doors placed by a rapper named X. of the songs my students only know the chorus to, but chanted long after he was shot and killed. He's woken up out of his death and wants to give back to those kids who found 776,910,397 2-minute, 47-second sessions of comfort in his music. His body wanders the streets, entering X doors, searching, who am I? The walls eternally echo, someone that's afraid to let go. How low can we go? I don't need or want to tell them. All the way to the floor. In this reverse world, there's no need to kill childhood heroes, no knowing a voice beloved may have beaten. His pregnant girlfriend choked her, threatened to insert a hot pick into her body, cut out her tongue for singing another song, held her head under water. The kids say, I love X, and I miss X, and sing, I'm sad, and sing it low, and sing sad and low everywhere they go. And can we bring it to the top? I didn't ever believe in destiny, but something about that sunny day and the blue shirts getting bluer in the park, smiling at the old and new mayors, taking pics for parents of their babies with ex-Eagles players, shouting, all we do is win, 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 looking up, not down, freeze. As the bodega owners watch from their doors and the neighbor ladies behind their screens and county cops because the city doesn't have them anymore, kids A, B, C, and D lower their necks. It's all right, kid A said. They're in that special white uniform to watch us. Hear us proclaim, not down, into local TVs. Everybody clap your hands. Thank you.
No, thank you. That was absolutely stunning. Like, thank you so much, Lauren. Before we go on to our final poet, it looks like we have our first raffle winner in the chat, Alexandria Wyckoff. I hope I am not butchering that last name. Congratulations, you're our first raffle winner of the night. Now, our last poet reading for tonight is Alicia Rebecca Myers. Her recent poem, Winter Solstice, was selected for inclusion in Best New Poets 2021, and she was a finalist for the 2022 Jeff Marks Memorial Poetry Prize. Her writing has appeared in creative nonfiction, Gulf Coasts, The Rumpus, and more. And her chapbook, My Seaborgium,
Yeah.
all right, from Bryan Mill Press, won the Mineral Point Chapbook Series competition. Miss Myers is currently at work on her first full-length poetry collection, and we'll put her Insta handle in the chat.
Thank you so much. This is a really lovely evening, and I'm just so honored to be a part of this beautiful journal and to be among all these like incredible writers. So thank you again. I'm going to read two poems that were in Subnivean and then a sonnet that I wrote last week. So we'll see how it goes. I'm going to start with the poem Hope, which is totally based on a real experience that makes me very happy. Hope. Our cat girlfriend came back after going missing for 3.5 years. I found her sprawled beside a caged tomato plant, the circular wire and her matted body together forming some forgotten hieroglyph, grail or luck or voucher. In the dark recesses of a cabinet, I located a can of salmon originally intended to help our family survive pandemic spring. I emptied its contents into Pyrex, but she refused the oily mound. I crouched down. I wanted a better look at her forehead lump, the size of a camera on an underwater drone sending photos back of trenches to the surface. Her eyes bored through me. It was clear she'd returned for the known quantity of yard or the last say or both. Stay, I coaxed, as if I retained any power. I walked to Green Star in a daze to purchase cat food, thinking how strange it is to suddenly be doing again a thing you'd assumed kaput. When the cashier ringing me up asked how my day had been, I told him the story, speaking it aloud for the first time, leaving out the lump, and he started to cry. We both did. Okay, this next poem is called Polychrome, and it features an epigraph by the writer Jennifer Senior, which is, this is one of the many things you learn about mourning when examining it at close range. It's idiosyncratic, anarchic, polychrome. Polychrome. The crimson feathers of a departing cardinal, the black cap of a chickadee that lands on a feeder at a rehab facility the man's family can't visit. His daughter stood outside, attached it to his window. The polypropylene mask's pale yellow, the electric golden of the unicorn horn print meant for a child, the clear tubing of a ventilator, the denim sky, the bright lime of the nozzle held by the 80-year-old woman who pumps gas for the very first time, her husband in the hospital, the murky brown of phlegm, the white of halogen, the pine of the waterfowl decoys to be auctioned off at an estate sale, the purple of fear, the current of cloister, the gray of denial like a bedside rail, the light blue flame at the center of burning, the violet anger, the color behind shut eyes. Okay, and the last one is the sonnet I just recently wrote. It's called Boom Boom Shrimp. I make boom boom shrimp minus any heat. History repeats itself with jarring substitutions. Children written in white outside a distant theater. Stirring flour, cream of tartar, cornstarch, and sea salt, I hear your squeal after some baker cuts into a boot that turns out to be a cake. You delight in reveal. Laughter rockets from the center of the living room. For the sweet dipping sauce, I'll omit sriracha and chili flakes. I'm giving you a palatable version. Tidbit to tongue is one of the few ways I have to revise the outcome. This spoon, this stove. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. And I'm sure our audience can see why we chose these 4 poets. They're all amazing. And with that, I will move on to our fiction finalists. And so Zach Swiss lives in New York City with his wife and daughter. He holds a BA in government from Dartmouth College and works as chief of staff at Heineken USA. His writing has also appeared in Event, Valparaiso Fiction Review, Typishly, The MacGuffin, and other publications. We'll share his website link in the chat, and I'll pass it off to Zach.
Excellent, thank you. Thrilled to be here. Thank you for Subnivean for hosting this, for publishing all our writing, and it is really a fantastic collection of writers. Happy to be a part of it. I'm going to read a selection from my story, HQ2. Fletcher and his crew had swept the old Macy's bare the day before, discarding bent wire hangers, yellowed receipts, loose mannequin parts. He'd positioned the class in a horseshoe by the glass elevators, long ago frozen on the 2nd floor, and arranged posters where the perfume counters had once been, their outlines permanently tattooed on the beige, sun-faded carpet. The Carbondale shopping mall opened in 1973, the first little girl read from her trifold board. The picture on the center pane showed bunting draped above the front doors. The food court was completed in 1990 and anchored by Sbarro's, the boy next to her said, stumbling over the pronunciation. His classmates snickered. With 1 million square feet of open space, the mall would make an ideal office for a corporation with imagination, a third boy recited. Who doesn't love children, Fletcher reasoned. He'd purchased the posters, researched the chronology, printed the photos, written the script. He'd done everything but assemble the boards, and even there he'd exerted his influence, urging the children to decorate with restraint, to take it easy on the glitter. It's a Wednesday, Robert thought, watching and listening, a school day. What assignment are these kids missing to be here? What lesson will they miss? Mrs. Nelson applauded, small claps as if her hands were stuck together by chewing gum. Fletcher had forgotten she did that. Well done, kids, well done, she said. What do we say to Mayor Fletcher? She raised her arms like a conductor. Thank you, Mayor Fletcher, they sang out. Mrs. Nelson continued. Did you know, class, that before he became the youngest mayor in Carbondale history, Mayor Fletcher was one of my favorite students? She smiled at him, her big gummy smile, and began to clap again. Only a few students joined in. Now, class, she said, turning away from Fletcher, did you know that Mr. Robert works for one of the richest men in the whole world? Class, what do we say to Mr. Robert? In unison, they trilled, choose Carbondale. Fletcher had been frightened of the horses as a child. He didn't remember this himself, but his old nanny liked to remind him whenever they caught up that he used to cling to her leg and whimper when they'd round a corner and the carousel would be there before them. Understandable, he'd thought 2 days earlier, examining them once again, their gnarled legs menacing and lifelike, their teeth bared, nostrils flaring. Relative to the other relics he'd come across during the refurbishment, the carousel had aged fairly well. Visible signs of heavy wear limited to a few roughly abraded flanks and small etches in some of the manes where little nails had scratched the wood. He had apparently not been the only frightened child. You grew up here, I take it, Robert said, as they left the old Macy's and headed into the mall, petting one of the carousel horses as they walked past. Mrs. Nelson and her class stayed behind. Robert had no idea what Fletcher had planned for him next. Yes, sir, Fletcher answered, a wonderful town for children. Born and raised? Just raised. I was born in New York City. We moved here when I was 6. It had never been clear to Fletcher why. The house his parents had built, the largest in town, sat unoccupied most of the time. His father worked in the city and spent weeknights at an apartment they kept downtown. His mother often joined him. They spent most weekends in Manhattan too, or elsewhere, Sanibel Island or Aspen or abroad. When Fletcher was a young child, they left him home with the nanny. As he got older, friends' parents would invite him to spend the weekend. Sometimes his parents sent them floral arrangements from a shop in Tribeca as a token of gratitude. Not always, though. Are your parents still in town, Robert asked. No, they've moved back to the city. They travel a lot. Where were they this week, he wondered. Vienna, Vientiane, somewhere with a V, far away. And now you're mayor, Robert said. I'm sure they must be very proud. During junior year of high school, on one of the many Saturdays when Fletcher's parents were gone, he'd thrown a party and half his grade had come. The plan had been to clean in the morning, but his parents returned home earlier than expected. Walking in and surveying the damage, his mother said, "This town has ruined you." His father said nothing, just took the keys to the Mercedes off the counter, picked up the Louis Vuitton valises he just put down, and left. His mother pulled her fur coat closed and followed a step behind. The handful of friends who'd slept over watched the whole thing mutely and stayed after they'd gone to help clean. That's nice of you to say, Fletcher said. I'm sure they are. If the skylights overhead had not been covered with dead leaves, if the planters held more than just dirt and cigarette stubs, if the fountains still danced as they once must have, Robert could have imagined the atrium being a fine place for a meeting of the sort Fletcher had planned. As it was, the space felt dingy and dreary. Credit the young mayor for trying, Robert thought. He'd covered the table in white cloth and placed a notepad, pen, and folded nameplate at each station. Fletcher called it a roundtable workshop with the Carbondale Chamber of Commerce, but Robert immediately recognized it for the theater it was. To be frank, business has never been better, insisted Tim Sloman of Sloman's Hardware on Main, to vigorous nods around the table. My sales are booming, Patricia Lernigan, owner of Butter Bakery, added. Someone called out, ours too. The workforce is stronger than it's ever been, contributed Miles Roach III from Roach, Livermore, and Baskin, attorneys at law. Yes, it is, others muttered. It was a well-worn script, and Robert, dutiful one-man audience, hit his beats perfectly, nodding, encouraging, prompting as needed. Every town he visited seemed to be in the midst of an unprecedented economic miracle. It wasn't their fault, really, that they all served up the same tepid pap. It was what they all thought he wanted to hear. It was what someone in his position should want to hear, but it wasn't what he wanted to hear. Things went on in that vein for some time until, from across the table, someone said quietly, "We're a man down today." Fletcher, hovering nearby, visibly tensed. The others, boisterous a moment before, grew silent. Some lowered their heads. The doctors say natural causes. I say bullshit. He died of a broken heart. The speaker was a small man, an old-timer in a VFW hat with a gravelly voice and deeply creased face. He'd introduced himself at the outset, but otherwise he'd been silent. You all, he said, gesturing around the table, know who I mean, but you, sir, he jabbed a finger at Robert, have no idea. So I'll tell you. He paused, and when he continued, his voice was low and soft. His name was Jerry O'Farrell. He opened O'Farrell's books on the corner of Cedar and Duncan back in the 60s. 3 years ago, it closed. Why? The table was still. I'll tell you why. They, again, he jabbed his finger at Robert, killed his business. He died a broken man. You all fawn over this guy. He waved his hand dismissively in Robert's direction, like he's the second coming of Christ Almighty. But I tell you, it was him, another livid jab, and his CEO buddy with all his billions who did Jerry in. Where do you think those billions come from? Out of the pockets of guys like Jerry. And now you're begging them to come finish off the rest of us. He shook his head, disgusted, and glared. Robert thought for a moment he might spit on the tablecloth. Shame on you. He fixed Fletcher with a look of unadulterated revulsion. And shame on you, Mr. Big Shot Mayor. Slowly, deliberately, he stared at each face. Shame on all of you. With that, he stood and walked out, past an easel Fletcher had positioned along the periphery, with a poster proclaiming Carbondale, open for business. Thank you all.
Thank you. Your story literally gave me goosebumps, Zach. That was so good. All right, so we actually right now have our second and third winners in the chat. So our second winner is Heather Donaire. I apologize once again if I am butchering your name. And our third winner is Patrick Hanlon. So we are going to move on to our second fiction finalist. Melissa Brown has worked as an investigative broadcast journalist for MSNBC and for ABC News affiliates in Seattle and Washington, D.C., and is enrolled in the Creative Writing Master's Program at Johns Hopkins University. Brown is currently working on a novel, and what you're about to hear is her first published story. Congrats, Melissa!
Thank you. This is sort of a nonlinear piece, so I'm gonna read not quite from the top. This story is called 3 Karens. Karen 2. The lacrosse bros in your boyfriend's fraternity called her Black Karen, as in Black Karen is the best looking Black girl at Duke. The ponytailed guys who read poetry in the campus coffee house called her Hot Karen. She was your freshman year roommate and your best friend. Did she know the boys called her that? You never asked. She never said. You grew up in New York City around plenty of Black people, but to your chagrin, you never had a close friend, a confidant, who was Black. When you got your roommate's name in the envelope, the roommate assignment card said, Karen Cooper from St. Louis. The personal information form said she played field hockey and liked Depeche Mode. She looked worried when you walked in the room and saw her sitting on her neatly made bed with its blue flowered Laura Ashley comforter. Not what you were expecting, right? Karen asked. But when you saw her, you felt like you won the lottery. Her beauty was one thing, and yes, her otherness. You were drawn to her like everyone was. Now you see how amazing it was how she navigated the racial minefield of a Southern university in the 1990s. She darted around social obstacles, hopscotched through people's expectations, not pledging a Black sorority or a white one, dating a Black basketball star, then the white heir to a candy empire. Karen was somehow welcome everywhere. Once she said a girl in her Afro-American studies class, yes, that is what they called it then, called her an Oreo. She said she was more like cookies and cream ice cream. She felt all mixed up. You think she said that to try to explain it to you, to break it down. But you suspect it's not how she felt. If you were honest, you were jealous when you saw her talking to her Black friends on campus, the way her shoulders relaxed, the way she threw her head back when she laughed with them, eyes flashing, a softer smile. And no one laughed harder than her about the Karen phenomenon. Once, near the end, when you took her for chemo, she told you, you know, my mom named me Karen for the exact reason that it sounded so white. She wanted people to read my college application, my resume, and not know. She wanted me to be able to make a damn dinner reservation. In the very end, sometimes you stood outside her hotel room, lingering like a stalker or an unwelcome guest. You saw her cousins, her friends from high school, gathered around her bed, their heads bowed together, dark hair touching, brown hands clasped in prayer. They laughed with her about old private jokes from the time before you. Karen never prayed or went to church once all the time you knew her. When she looked up at you standing at the door to the hospital room, her eyes were blank, like she was looking through you, like you were a stranger. Karens, entitled middle-aged women who display a septic amount of white privilege. Weingarten, Jean. Karen 3. I don't complain anymore, ever. But these days, the complaints are building up. I imagine a mountain of resentment, like a landfill or one of those islands of plastic floating around the Pacific, forming new continents. I imagine a Greek chorus of Karens following me. They are all white women, middle-aged in skinny jeans, all wearing ironic t-shirts with slogans like, "Because I said so," and "Can I speak to the manager?" Their arms are usually crossed over their chests, but sometimes they put their hands on their hips. They wear their hair in complicated frosted bobs, shades of blonde from platinum to soft gold. "Just say you don't like the dressing on your salad," they whisper. "The dealer said the car would be ready an hour ago, and now you are really late. Just ask when it will be ready," they croon. "Post a picture of the SUV that took up 3 parking spaces in the crowded Safeway lot. It's funny. Everyone will get it," they encourage. I try to explain to them there is safety in silence, but they are talking about me amongst themselves, looking at me over their shoulders, like every mean girl I ever met at a dance competition or PTA meeting. There is a metallic buzz in the air. They have a plan for me, I fear. Karen slang from Wikipedia. This article is about the term and meme. Karen is a pejorative term for a white woman seemingly perceived as entitled or demanding beyond the scope of what is normal. The term is often portrayed in memes depicting white women who use their privilege to demand their own way. The term has been criticized for being ageist, sexist, racist, classist, misogynistic, and seeking to control women's behavior. The Guardian called 2020 the year of the Karen. Karen won again. Michelle chose the cat after weeks of stalking different sad cases on Pet Finder. "Get off the pet porn," Evan would complain as the white light of her laptop kept him awake. The rescue named the cat Esther, a retro cute name Michelle would have kept, but the kids insisted on Karen. From the start, Karen would aggressively ignore pleas to come and sit with them. She would allow them to pet her, but if a human finger touched her anywhere but below her left ear or directly above her right cheekbone, she savagely clawed or bit. Michelle fed her, scooped the litter box, but Karen only liked Luke, already 6'4" at 17, a modern day Viking with blazing red hair styled into a half crew cut, half floppy on top style that displeased his Jewish grandmother, who described it as early Hitler youth. In another era, Luke might have turned into a marauding, date-raping ball of toxic masculinity. But the hippie progressive school that Michelle, yes, Michelle, had championed sending him to for $40K a year had brainwashed him into a member of the Gen Z Stasi. He was a level 100 thought policeman, a cancel culture warrior ready to pounce on Michelle and Evan at every transgression. When Michelle slowed down the minivan to give money to a homeless person sitting on the side of the highway at exit 33, of course, she was the only one in the family old-fashioned enough to have actual cash or change, Luke scolded her. "He is not homeless, Mom. He is a person experiencing homelessness. It's presumptive to assume money is what he needs. A house is what he needs, Luke. You are projecting your white middle-class values on him." "Are you even being serious?" Michelle rolled down the window. "Okay, boomer. I'm Gen X for fuck's sake," yelled Michelle as she handed the homeless man a 5 through the window, careful not to touch his hand. Karen 2 again. For all of freshman year, Karen didn't talk about St. Louis, and you didn't ask. It was as if she came to life fully formed at the moment you opened the dorm door, Botticelli's Venus in a neon yellow Benetton sweater. You knew she'd gone to a fancy private school on scholarship, modeled in fashion shows at her local mall, had a mother and 2 cousins and a father with another family, but she was private, and you were so desperate to be close to her, you accepted not knowing her. If you were honest, there are points at which the friendship stuttered, moments of misunderstanding so painful it made you both wince. There were small things, like when you tried to make her run across the quad in a rainstorm. Drunk on wine coolers, you grabbed her arm to pull her out into the storm. She snapped at you and told you playing in the rain was for white girls. And the hair. Once you started to ask her about it as she prepared for bed, carefully wrapping her head in a shiny black scarf. "Don't be a fucking anthropologist," she said. "But I'm just trying to understand the hair thing." "Just don't," she said. "Please don't be an asshole." And bigger ones, like when she chose a childhood friend from home to be godmother to her daughter Coco. She said, "No, you're not religious, and I'm just doing it for my grandma," not looking you in the eye. This after you drove her to all her IVF appointments, helped her scan through hundreds of sperm donors, looking for the perfect confluence of education, brains, and BMI. This after the phone rang and her husband said, "Your girlfriend is going into labor." He called her your girlfriend as a joke, but he was jealous, you knew, of her draw, her charisma, your shared 20-year history stickier than sex. This after you were the first one to hold Coco in the hospital, after you kissed her tiny wrinkled nose and her thin spider fingers touched your cheek like a whisper. What is more Karen than complaining about being called Karen? Lewis, Helen. Karen 3 again. Some days the Karens like to hang out in the backseat of the minivan, squeezed in like circus clowns. In the rearview mirror, their features meld together, not quite holding their form. Other days, they crowd around me in the bathroom, fixing their lipstick, borrowing the hairspray. They sound like bees, blenders, a buzzsaw. I don't encourage them. I'm not even checking social media, but they seem to know what's going on anyway. Just so you know, your daughter is posting some crazy selfies, one whispers. Her hoo-ha is practically showing, and she's almost French kissing her little female friend, she adds. We don't judge, another says sweetly. You just might want to do something about it. You are her mother. It's a matter of her personal safety, her reputation, says another. I'm letting her express herself, I say. They roll their eyes in unison. They all draw closer as I take a sip of my Starbucks mocha. I quickly put the lid on. The smell can make them, well, out of control. A good whiff and sometimes they start spinning like dervishes, a whirlpool, or maybe something more ancient and essential. That's it.
Actually hear my tiny claps this time. That was great. And then, so last, but a million miles from the least, we'll have our final reader of the night. But before that, I'm going to announce raffle winners. I think it's 4 and 5. I'm not good with numbers. I'm in English, which is Marty Storm and Jonathan Glaby. So we will contact you later. But moving on, Avtar Singh's latest novel is Necropolis. It is set in Delhi and is about crime, poetry, and a woman who might be centuries old. He's just completed Into the Forest. That's the novel's working title anyways, about the lives of a few women in a German forest in COVID times. There are disappearances, a possible murder, and a talking dog. Singh was founding editor of Time Out Delhi and managing editor of the Indian Quarterly. His nonfiction appeared in the Washington Post, Foreign Policy, Nikkei Asian Review, and elsewhere. A 2018 McDowell Fellow, Singh lives and works near Stuttgart with his wife, son, and a singing dog. Learn more at the link we're adding into the chat, and I will give the mic over.
Thank you. That's practically my entire life. So well done, Mads. My story is called The Corpse Bearer, and it's set in Delhi. And exactly a year ago, many of you might remember that Delhi suffered very badly with the Delta outbreak, and it was reported widely in the foreign press that there were in fact burning grounds all around the city because the crematoria couldn't keep up. That was in fact true. So I'm going to read bits of the story. Apologies. I'll just introduce the person, the protagonist, so to speak, is a man named Rahim. The name is a giveaway. He is Muslim. The corpse he bears is his best friend, Umakant, who is a Hindu and a Brahmin. And so Rahim, to get rid of him, to get rid of the body rather, to dispose of the body correctly, needs two things. He needs to find a place to burn the body, and he needs to find a priest to say the final prayers. That priest is called a Pandit. So, and he goes looking for places to burn him. So the first place, have you brought wood? I've brought the body. Isn't that enough? You think this is a fucking joke? The man looked at the end of his tether. Even by the firelight, his eyes were bloodshot. Rahim couldn't tell whether it was through lack of sleep or too much to drink. His hair was wild, his hands dirty, his soiled vest torn and showing the skin beneath. Well, do you? Brother, please, said Rahim placatingly. I didn't know I needed to bring any. We have none. There aren't even any trees left in this place. People have brought chairs, tables, their own beds to burn. What do? The government? They can go fuck themselves. You think this land is clearance for burning bodies? Do you think I work for them? He ran his hand through his matted hair. He hadn't bothered with the mask. Perhaps he thought it was too late. These people and their fucking bodies. It's 2 a.m. and they're still coming. Rahim bit his lip. Behind the man blazed a few fresh fires. Many more smoked down to the sides. At the periphery, beyond the flames, squatted a few sets of masked men. They seemed to be waiting. Can we not put my friend on one of those? He asked, pointing to the vigorous young blazes. The persons already on them wouldn't mind, surely. That's what they've paid for. The other man gestured towards the waiting groups. Of course they have, thought Rahim. How did you bring the body? A handcart. Wooden? Naturally. Let's take a look. The man cast his eyes over the cart in which Umakant still lay. The wheels were no good, he muttered. The long beams too hard and too old. They would never catch. But the cheap planks of the bed, if Rahim were to help cut them down, he could fit Umakant in. Are you a Pandit? Asked Rahim. Why? You getting married? Rahim looked at him wordlessly. The other man sighed. I'm not a Pandit, and I don't have one here. They're like everyone else, waiting to get sick, or they're already dead. Rahim sighed in his turn. Where can I find a Pandit? What fucking difference does it make? It matters to his family, to me. Burial would be easier, muttered the other man. It always is when so many die. Rahim looked away. Trust me, friend, I'm a professional. Where can I find a Pandit? Rahim asked again. The public crematorium in town. Not that he'll get a slot there, but he should be able to find someone to say his prayers for him. What you do after that is up to you. Rahim nodded, set his hands to the cart. Sell me the cart. What? I'll give you a good price. What will I do with my friend if I sell what I'm carrying him on? The professional looked at him sideways, then stepped back towards the burning ground. At another crematorium, one driver, muttering at his own stupidity, is willing to go. He stops at the gate of the crematorium, pausing barely long enough for Rahim to pull his friend out of the back. Rahim lays Umakant down in a large open hall. He is grateful for the overhead fans. Men wait all around the hall, distancing as best as they can. There's still loads strewn across the floor. He notes the absence of women. Rahim had liked that about the city, that women walked its streets without fear. Now their lives were indoors again. Another casualty of the sickness. A man walks across. There is a small basket of marigolds in his hands. We have no more slots. I have money, says Rahim. How much? Rahim takes out the entire wad, whatever is left after paying the taxi driver his extortionate price. The man looks at the notes in Rahim's hand, their denominations, the fact that he doesn't count the cost. Won't you need some of that for later, for food? Rahim notes the eyes above the mask, the kindness mixed with fatigue, where he expected only greed. Anything at all. I do need the money, Rahim wants to say. I need to eat and pay rent. I have a wife and son at the other end of the world, living at the edge of hunger. I need the money so I can find a chair outside an ATM. Umakant had had a family as well. It is all for him, says Rahim. The other man nods briefly. Are you a Pandit? Asks Rahim. There is one here. Will you do the prayers for my friend? The man has a notebook. He asks for Umakant's information, his name, his father's name, when he was born, where he was from, and the people he leaves behind. The bare particulars of his life, which is to say, the entirety of his life. It is for the crematorium's register, for the Pandit to name as he makes his recitation. You can go. We will take care of him. Shouldn't I wait for the ashes? I can't tell you when we'll burn him. I have nowhere else to be. I can't let you wait. The rules. Rahim closes his eyes. Brother, am I not supposed to put his ashes in running water? What is your name? Rahim. They look at each other quietly. The crematorium attendant asks Rahim to hold out his hands, into which he drops a flower from his basket. Rahim looks at him uncomprehendingly, the marigold in his outstretched hands. Come with me, says the other man. Rahim leaves Umakant for the first and the last time. He follows the man to a small gate at the end of the hall, beyond which he sees steps leading down into a storm drain. Follow that drain. Don't leave it, or you may be stopped by the police. You understand? Rahim nods. The drain leads to the river. You'll have to walk a bit into the plain to find the stream itself, but it is still flowing. When you see the flowing water, throw the flower in. Where does the water go? Asked Rahim. It joins Mother Ganga. Really? She flows past our home on her way to the sea. Good. Your friend will be carried there. Imagine that, thinks Rahim. He starts down the steps. A man's friends are the true measure of him, calls the man. He was lucky to have you, Rahim. Rahim bows his head. He reaches the dirty water of the drain, turns east towards the river, the sun now dipping swiftly behind him. His steps should be lighter now that his load is gone, but he feels as if his shoulders will break. His phone rings. It is the man from yesterday, the one who wants to advance him 10,000 rupees. What news of Umar Khan? He's dead. The other man is silent for a space. He must be praying, thinks Rahim. What did you decide about the money? Rahim disconnects the call, puts the phone in his pocket. Above him soar the pariah kites of this city. There is plenty for them to feast on in this season. His hands are cupped protectively around their load, a dusty marigold bound for his home 1,000 kilometers away. Soon he feels he will see the river, and every river leads in time to the sea.
Thank you. That was amazing. That was one of my favorite ones that we read. Very happy about that. And so as we wrap up our readings, I'm going to announce our last, I think, raffle winner is Shalandria Fields. I am again as sorry as Angel if I messed up your name horribly. And so with my other co-host having a fire drill, the joys of college life, I'm gonna take over for a minute and start talking about our judges, which one of our judges is two-time poet laureate Juan Felipe Herrera, who is having travel issues and is going to call us from the airport, I think. And the author that I'm about to introduce, Daniel Handler, the author of a series of unfortunate events, Poison for Breakfast, The Basic Eight, and more. You're probably already fans like us, but we'll share their bios for the heck of it. San Francisco native and Wesleyan University alum Daniel Handler has written numerous notable works, such as the famous A Series of Unfortunate Events as Lemony Snicket, The Basic Eight, Why We Broke Up, Poison for Breakfast, Watch Your Mouth, Bottle Grove, and more. His books have sold more than 70 million copies, have been translated into 40 languages, as well as adapted for film, stage, and television. He's won all of the awards, from Kids' Choice to Favorite Book to the Writers Guild of America Award, just all of them. And our other author went to UCLA, Stanford University, and Iowa Writers Workshop alum, Juan Felipe Herrera. His work includes video, photography, theater, poetry, prose, and performance. Beyond serving as our United States Poet Laureate as well as California's Poet Laureate, he was Chancellor of the Academy of American Poets from 2011 to 2016, and is also famous as a leading voice on the Mexican American and Indigenous experience. So how amazing is it that we get these heavyweights who both live in California but have never met and to talk to us tonight. And I'm actually going to start out with questions for one Mr. Daniel Handler. And so the first question is, your family has inspired your writing, including the play Imaginary Comforts, which was shaped by mourning your father's death. Are there some subjects that are too personal to write about?
Are there some subjects that are too personal to write about? I mean, in general, no, I don't think so. But I think that you can only write the way you can write. And so I'm sure plenty of other people have trouble talking about plenty of other things. I never thought I would write a memoir, and this year I wrote a memoir. So I wrote about things that I never thought I would speak frankly about, and it was a very spooky and liberating experience to be drafting this book. So I think you can write about anything, but I think you have to kind of get to the space that you're in to do it. In the same way that, you know, you can talk about anything, but it doesn't mean like if you're in an elevator and somebody says something to you, you're ready to answer them. So I think you have to reach a place to be comfortable to talk about something. That's what I think.
Hello. Okay. So you both attended prestigious colleges. Did you enjoy them? And what's the most important thing you learned studying writing in or out of school?
I'm doing what we call in the business riffing, which is like waiting for the other guy to get to a place where you can talk. So when I arrived at Wesleyan University, I knew I wanted to be a writer. I was very interested in that. And I went to the famous writer's office to ask if I could be in the famous writer's class. And I was, the famous writer told me what the class would be like. And that on the first day of the class, that the famous writer was going to give me a poem and I was going to memorize it. And we were going to meet in a field and recite our poems. And I felt like I had started medical school, and it turns out I didn't like blood. Like I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to memorize a poem in a field. I love poetry, don't get me wrong. I have a stack of poetry right here that I'm reading actually. But the idea that that was like the way to start class felt really strange to me. And so I didn't sign up for the famous writers class. And then I ended up at a strange dinner that they had for people who are interested in writing. And I sat next to this other writer of whom I'd never heard. She's Kit Reed, and she became kind of my mentor in my lifetime. We lost her a few years ago, and I really miss her. And she had a writing class too. And what you did was that you wrote 10 pages.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Oh, yay, he's here. Hooray, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to
dedication to like walking through the airport and then participating in a conversation.
Yes, it's kind of an airport. It's an airport conversation.
Well, how was your college experience? Did you learn to write in college? Is that where it happened?
My college experience was a pretty crazy experience. That was in 1967. I went to UCLA from downtown life in a small room with my mother and father, and it was just a whole different world. So when I got to UCLA, I had a big cardboard box, which was my luggage, and then I borrowed another luggage piece, and I ended up in the maternity ward because I thought that was a dorm. That'll give you an idea. That'll give you an idea. So then I was looking for the dorm, and it was so far. I slept on the main quad at UCLA, and then I made it to the top of the hill where the dorm was. So that was my first experience. After that, it was it was 67. So that was Vietnam. That was the Chicano, gay, women's movement, Black movement, red movement. Everybody was in movement, as we all know. So it was very fired up campus. So I was more involved in that side of things, aspect of things, dimension, experience. So I participated in that quite a bit. And my classes, I would turn in poetry and art, and on occasion I would do the actual paper. Uh, um, so that was my experience. I did the papers, but I turned in a lot of poetry and a lot of art, and participated in all those strikes and marches and protests. And they were lethal, as you know. Those were lethal. Yeah, people got shot. That was my experience. Yeah. And I lived in a house. You imagine the animal house with Belushi? I lived in that animal house. That was the other side of it.
Okay, thank you for your answers. And second question, what jobs were you guys working to pay the bills when your writing took off or before it took off? First of all, I'll ask that.
I never have a good answer to this question. I was a fast typist. I still am. I took like a real typing course because my handwriting was illegible. So I took a typing course when I was like 12. That was like for secretaries, is what they called them then. And so I could always work in an office. So I had like various soul draining office jobs, but none of them were interesting to me. And I saw them as an unwitting artistic grant, because you could print at the office, you could like snitch paper and pens. So I pretended that these various companies were supporting the arts by hiring a struggling writer and looking the other way when he stole secretarial supplies. And to this day, when I go to an office and I'll see like the shelf where the legal pads are, and my brain is like, oh, you should grab a couple. And I have to be like, you're a person now, and that's not appropriate.
Yeah, paper is important. Yeah. Remember those early days? The reading was, of course, was public, and it was for the open. Whoever was in the audience or free speech area. That's how I started, kind of attempting to challenging myself to see if I could actually get up on a mound and free speech mound and recite a poem as best as I could. But I was so nervous that I began to scream it, thinking that was going to solve my expressive ability. But what it does, it just makes your throat crack. And I ended up sounding more like Mickey Mouse than being a poet, because I was squeaking. And then I would put together a little jazz group with my friends. Everybody was playing jazz, as you know, the string bass, the saxophone, congas, and then I said, let's do some poetry. So then I would do that in the main quad and Royce Hall quad, and I enjoyed doing that. But there was exactly no monies involved. So when I finished up at UCLA, I went to San Diego, where I had originally sprouted from. And I thought I'd go back and be part of the artistic Chicano movement in San Diego. So then we would get invitations to LA, of all places, for like $25. So I would come to get, $25. And one time my friend Alurista, who became a well-known poet and the Chicano Latinx birth, in a way, renaissance of creative writing and poetry and literature. I said, why don't you take my place? Santa Barbara, here's $150 that they already sent me. I go, oh, sure. So I went over there with a couple of friends that played drums and guitar, and we sang. But we were singing songs from Mexico City, the Danzantes de la Conquista, the Aztec dancers that do religious dance, kind of reconquering the cultural aspects of being an indigenous person in Mexico. So they were very religious dance, gourd and guitar and armadillo shells, mandolins. So I took that little group with me, and these are songs that you kind of go, vamos caminando. So, it was kind of tinny, and the professor said, I want my money back. So that's how that was the beginning. So there was no money involved. It was just writing and getting up there and voicing yourself for the community. And there was someone out there that was the reward of people in the audience that you actually gave them a gift. And that was it. That was the beginning. My beginning. Yeah. Our beginning.
So interesting that it's like everybody kind of has like the similar of like I started out as nothing, but it ends up something eventually. It's like those tropes.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful luxury to get to develop your work not entirely in isolation. You know, so much of writing, you're absolutely by yourself.
Yeah.
And so if you get to do anything, even if you're just sharing it with one other person, particularly when you're starting out, it can really be so powerful. It makes all the difference in the world. And so you know, I mean, I read with other people starting out. I had other people who I shared stuff with, and that was such a relief, because for a few years before that, I really didn't know anyone. And if you work all day trying to get a paragraph to do its thing and it doesn't work, and you meet people for dinner and you say, I've been working on a paragraph all day, you feel like a crazy person. And so it was really delightful to meet. I was back here in San Francisco after college, and slowly to meet, I was in the Mission and in the Castro, and there were open mic stuff and queer art stuff and a lot of really exciting opportunities just to be near other artists making stuff and to get to share that and feel less crazy, to feel, even though none of us were getting any attention as you would think about it, that at least we were giving each other attention, and that helped doing it.
So this isn't a question that we really have planned, but I'm really curious about it since you mentioned, like, you know, it's a privilege to be able to share our writing. There's a lot of writing platforms out there now, like where people can readily share their writing. If this was out there when you guys first started writing your stuff, would that be something you think you would participate in?
Oh, definitely. You know, it's very exciting. You know, it becomes a very emotional, expansive, expressive discovery. And you know, we're always experimenting and looking for new ways and expanding our voice and the voice of the people and the voice of our community and friends. It's always the community. So if we find something that's even more has more larger radius of contact, definitely would be doing that in those years. These years, it's really going so fast. I could barely make it out of the luggage roundabout here. So imagine learning all those new apps and installing them. It kind of slows me down. I want to hit that typewriter. I want to hit that paper. But you know, I like to. You know, I'm open to it. I like to. I just don't know what it is. You know, I just don't know what it is. I'm still on cardboard and fountain pens and crayons and markers and prism. You know, really nice markers that I like. Then I do drawings, and then I write, and I fold paper, and I use it to create paper books with paper, and then I write on those paper books, and I like them because the paper is soft, and it has a lot of texture, and I can really dive into it and disappear, and I just love the feeling of it all. But I'm sure I would like to use podcasts and all the other goodies out there. You know, send a poem out globally in seconds. That would be interesting. So I like the tangible, tactile, material aspect of it, and I really haven't explored that much on the digital aspect and global aspect.
Digital is a blessing and a curse, because notes apps have saved many a poem from going out of my memory in 2 seconds.
I agree.
Write it down. But on like the note of writing things, is there anything that you would go back and like change the way you wrote it, or that you didn't feel like a subject you didn't feel that you could write about that you've always wanted to?
I think it's dangerous to look back at your own work too much. I every step of the way I tried to do the best I could do. I don't think I really published anything when I didn't think it was ready to be published, and almost all of it I would change. So I just have to tell myself that was the best that you could do. It reminds me of, if you look at a picture of yourself from 7th grade, it's like, you probably would change your outfit and your hair. You probably wouldn't wear that now, but like, that's okay. You don't have to be mad at yourself for 7th grade when you're in 7th grade for like wearing something that you don't like. And that's what it feels like to me. So I would change a lot of it. I find it really painful to reread my own work, particularly from when it's fairly distant. I find that really just embarrassing. But I like to think that all my work is kind of conversing with itself in some way, but I don't always have to be there for the conversation. They can talk to themselves when I'm not around.
Yeah, those were early days, huh? Early days. Let's see, early days. I think right. Every letter we put down from the very beginning was a step forward. Yeah, every letter, every new word, every new line, every new discovery at that point that we were all excited about. Oh, look, a Keletsu. I hadn't read about Keletsu. This is an indigenous figure. I didn't know. I'm going to put Keletsu in this poem. It's going to be kind of a story within a poem, and I never done that before. So all those were great moments. And without those moments, I wouldn't be in this moment. So those are all valuable. It's like our lives, our beginning was valuable for our life now. So that's how I see it. So it is all beautiful. It is all beautiful.
On a less sentimental note, after that, very insightful advice for someone who just turned 21, and like I am in what you guys are like looking back on now, and I'm like, I can't wait to look back at that now. But what ice cream flavor do you think matches your personality? If anyone says vanilla, we're ending it.
Ice cream flavor.
What matches my personality? I don't know.
You could choose a favorite instead if you want.
I mean, one of the delights of, I live in San Francisco and I grew up in San Francisco. And one of the delights of staying in your hometown is to be in touch with nostalgia from your childhood. And so there's an ice cream place in the Mission in San Francisco called Mitchell's. It's been there forever. It's open late. It's where a lot of people go after church sometimes. So on a Sunday when I think no one's going to be there, it's packed with people in fancy clothes. It's kind of at a neighborhood in Nexus, and so there's just a lot of it's a truly diverse kind of encapsulating of people who are there, and the ice cream is super delicious, and it's many tropical flavors, and they have a baby coconut flavor that I love. Ooh. Yeah, and so that's my favorite ice cream. I don't know if it matches my personality, but I feel really at home at Mitchell's ice cream. Talking about it makes me want to go. I'm going to stay here for the rest of the event, but I could right now run over to Mitchell's ice cream and have some.
Is that in the Sunset?
No, it's on San Jose. It's like right where the Mission and the Excelsior kind of meet. And it's down from Noe Valley too, so you get a whole lot of folks.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and it's open till like 11, I think. And so when I was 21 in the 19th century, that was a good like late night. We would be like, "Oh, is it still open?" And we'd jam over there. We'd run.
It's nice to have a good ice cream shop.
Yeah,
definitely. There's a lot of good flavors and colors. So I think I would go with turquoise confetti. Turquoise rainbow confetti. It's like a turquoise color, right? It's turquoise color.
Sure.
Has little confetti specks in it and some rainbow swirls. And if I went all out, I would probably have pistachio in there. But turquoise confetti, rainbow, if I could get the rainbow going. Yeah, so maybe that's it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it is vanilla. There's nothing like there's nothing like simplicity, you know. Yeah.
Those are great choices.
Licorice, jalapeno, chile. How about that?
No, yeah, no, those are good flavors. So what would you guys think is the main difference between writing for adults and writing for children?
Take it away, Dan.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think I approach it the same way. I think of children's literature as sort of a genre. So in the same way that if you're trying to write a sonnet or if you're trying to write a mystery, there's some kind of things you can point to that belong in that family. But I started out as a poet. I thought I was going to be a poet. And I drifted into prose, and then I kind of fell into children's literature, and I like thinking about it, but I don't really approach it very differently. And I think that that's helpful. And I mean, I feel lucky that I get to do both things. That's really exciting for me. And there's a lot of really terrible children's literature that's written by writers who are otherwise good, who approach it differently, who say, now's the time that I'm going to teach a very important thing to the young people who are very hungry to learn this wonderful thing that I'm here to teach them. And the book is already boring. And so I think thinking of them as the same thing is helpful. It's helpful for me anyway.
Yeah, well, those are tough. They're both tough projects. For children, we can't, as you know, we can't get all complicated. And we really got to say it. Really got to say it. It's kind of stripped down, scraped stuff that we usually would write. It's already scraped. It's kind of truer for me. And it's like you're in a canoe. You know, you're in a nice canoe. And for middle school and young adults, it's like you're in a Chevy without two wheels, and you're speeding through in the night in the fields of Fresno. So that's for like young adult. And adult is you have a lot of room there to put all those things you've really been reflecting on violence as it is now, and on Ukraine as it is now. And then getting into it. We just can't write. We just can't put one color on the canvas. We really have to get in there and scrape and use a palette knife and maybe tear through the canvas and put other materials on it, or maybe not even use it anymore and paint yourself or paint the street. So it gets like that. But as long as we hit the depth of what we really see and feel and want to say in ourselves. As long as we got to get way down. It's like, what is it, like Jacques Cousteau? We really have to get way down there. And we stay on the surface, and then everyone's going to see it, everyone's going to feel it, and we won't really say anything. It'll sound good, it'll look good, but we have to go way down into that darkness.
Okay. Do you find your own literary strengths and weaknesses and or tastes changing a lot?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm always hungry to read something from some corner of literature that I haven't read before, whether it's a part of the world or coming from a voice that I haven't really experienced. And so I like to think that it seems like my taste could only get wider, right? I'm reading a whole lot. Some of it I like, so therefore there's more and more things I like all the time. And so I feel it feels good for me in a way, and essential to read stuff that I'm not familiar with. I feel my brain kind of grappling around it, trying to figure out what it is. And that feels good for writing. But of course, there's a million books that I go back to that I really, really love. So I don't know. And in terms of my own strengths and weaknesses, I try not to think about my own strengths and weaknesses. It all feels hard. And you don't get to, like, it doesn't give you a break. I think in certain ways, it doesn't get easier. It's just always hard. You're always hard. I was at a thing last night. I heard Lauren Groff speak, and she said that she felt like you're only as good a writer as you are in that very moment. And she said that right now she was a terrible writer because she's working on this book and it's driving her nuts. And it was great to hear that. I thought to myself, oh, good, Lauren Groff's a terrible writer too. We're all terrible writers. What a relief.
Very true. I mean, I feel like a terrible writer most of the time, but I think that's most everyone who's ever like picked up a pen thinks that they're not good, but you never know. Another question, is there, oh wait, do you have a favorite place to write? Like somewhere that always gets the creative juices flowing rather than just like at the dinner table, I guess.
I write mostly in cafes and some libraries. Every cafe has a tragic flaw. Today, I was in a cafe working, and that has the tragic flaw of having really good pastries, so that you're tempted to eat a pastry and then just sit in a calorie coma. So a common cafe flaw is bad music is playing. I've just discovered a cafe that I thought was perfect, and then I sat down and worked, and then they said, we're closing, it's 2:30. And that's when I learned that was the tragic flaw of that cafe. Who closes the cafe at 2:30? Some people don't even want coffee until 2:30. So yeah, I like to work someplace away from home, away from the internet, with a pen and paper in a cafe. That's what I like.
I'm going outside here. It's kind of a tunnel. It's a tunnel.
You are the light at the end of that tunnel.
I'm being transformed at this very moment. I'm acquiring a new identity, you guys.
Congratulations. I like the old one though.
I want to put stuff down, okay? And I tore up one of my ligaments of my I think biceps that goes into your shoulder bone. I messed it up a while ago, but I can carry stuff, but I can't lift up my arm. So, but I'm here. So how's it going, you guys?
Good. I'm gonna let Angel ask the next question.
Yes.
Okay.
And we are glad you are here. Thank you again for joining us tonight. So both of you have written for stage, screen, and page. Which do you prefer and why?
Can you repeat that just a little bit?
So
I'll get out of the noise.
So both of you have written for stage, screen, and page. Which do you prefer and why?
Stage is really great. Stage is really great because you can work with other people and musicians, actors, performers, dancers, and whatever in the audience. You can break that. You can expand the sphere of creativity. That's the good part. And the historical barrier between the performer and the audience can be eliminated. It can be pushed away. Yeah, it can be dissolved. So the stage offers all those possibilities. If you're aware of it, all you have to do is be aware of it and invite others and make a particular kind of contact with the audience. If it's just the audience for you, and if it's just the stage for you, and if it's just your poem for you or your writing for you, then you might as well be at home and doing your your work, which is great. But if you really want to get on that stage, your the sphere, the the creative sphere expands, and everyone is together as one.
It is, I find it, I really like, it's addictive to write for actors for sure. If you write something and then actors read it out loud, it's really fun. And then you change it and they read it out loud again. That can be very addictive. I find the hours for theater exhausting. That's whenever I work on a theater piece, rehearsal starts at 6 p.m. And I think, shouldn't we all just have a whiskey now? Aren't we all done rehearsing? And I like writing on the page a lot. I think probably the page is the best. The thing with screen, I think, is that it's really expensive to put things on screen. And so people have to build things, people have to spend a lot of money, and everybody gets really nervous. And so you know, movies cost millions of dollars, and the people in charge of it act like you would act if someone gave you like a tote bag with $20 million in it. And they said, can you just hold this tote bag over here? Will you stand in this mini mall and hold this tote bag with $20 million? And you would be freaked out. And they're freaked out all the time because it's expensive. And it's no fun to work with freaked out people.
Okay, so thank you both for your answers. I think we just have 2 more questions. And one of them is, are there any writers or books that have inspired you through the years or helped shape your work? Which is a question from one of our audience members, Angel Leal.
I mean, it's countless. I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm really excited to be in conversation with our other fine judge today. I think his book, Notes on the Assemblage, is pretty amazing. So that's a book that I've come back to a bunch of times. I read a lot of poetry. I find that even though I am writing prose, that paying attention to the details that is in poetry is really inspirational. So right now I'm reading this book by, I'm trying to get it, by Nina Polari. She's a Finnish poet. It's a really beautiful cycle about grief. I'm reading Carl Phillips, who's a great American poet here. He's really special too. I mean, it will be no surprise to people who know anything about my work that I read a lot of Baudelaire. He's been inspiring to me since I was like 13 years old. So yeah, I like to wander around and pick things up. My desk is crowded with books. This is like, I have 4 stacks that look like this right now on my desk. That's how I like to read. I like it all over the place. And I like to have it near me. When I love a book, I just keep it on my desk for a while. This is a really great book about writing. It's by Dorothea Lasky. It's called Animal. I've been reading this a lot. Ever since I picked it up, I like Dorothea Lasky's poetry a lot. I saw that she had a book called Animal, and I opened it up and I saw that it had a picture of the Muppet animal. And I was all in. I was like, I must take this book right home. And so I've had this on my desk for probably a year. I've read it a bunch of times. It's lectures on writing. And it's been super important as I try to make this memoir into a real book. So that's enough. I could go on forever. I could wander through a tunnel like my other judge, and the tunnel would have nothing but books in it, and I would talk incessantly of them.
Well, you know, every as things change, right? As things change, we have new voices and new events and new writers and new writings and new experiments and new forces to write and new coalitions of writers and groups and new solitudes as well. So that's what has influenced me. Once again, since the mid-60s, it was the farm workers movement. I was very interested in that because my parents were farm workers. So I began to write in that fashion. And in San Diego, writing bilingual poetry was an ecstatic experience. To write in Spanish and English, and maybe Aztec or Mexica terms was incredible. And to write the way we talk in the streets or at home or among ourselves was ecstatic again. So that was that moment, and that created a lot of that helped me create a lot of work. And I found a river and ocean that I could surf in and that I felt fabulous in, and was something I wanted to give to others. And then as time goes on, the late 70s, it was Central America, the movements in Latin America, the social and political movements in Central America, Latin America, became very pronounced. And we're all talking about that. And like you said, in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and throughout the United States in the West Coast. So that influenced me in the writers of that time. La Caribe, La Alegría, of course, Roque Dalton, that we all were reading. And good old Jack Hirschman was always writing, and on. So then I definitely was influenced by that. And it was a very meaningful moment for all of us, for everyone. Since we had a lot of Central Americans in the Bay Area and throughout the nation, it was a good thing, and we all participated. And it goes on. And today it's kind of more difficult in a way. It's a little more prismatic. It's a little bit more, there are many more tributaries and many more influences and many more experiments. And now we have, like we said a while ago, we have the media. So that's a whole different society. So we have the media society where you can just dive in and meet thousands and thousands of people. And you have on the street society where you meet 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 100 or 700, and that's probably the limit. So both of those societies have different influences and ways of speaking and interests and styles and trends and languages. So there's a lot. Actually, there's too much, you guys. There's too much. What are we going to do, Lemony? What are we going to do? There's a flood. There's a flood.
I find it comforting. You can't finish with literature. It's an ongoing relationship. You can't, it's a practice. And I think when you're starting out, it can feel overwhelming, and it's helpful to realize that literature has your back in that way. When what you're reading and what you love, you can be attached to it for the rest of your life. And the main comfort that you're going to have from literature is from reading and from participating in it. There's not, your chances of making a living are practically nil, as we all know. Your chances of meeting a great portion of your readers, is nil. It has to be your own relationship with literature and what you're doing. That's going to be the most satisfying part of it. And so I find it comforting that there's like too much to read. That's great. What if there wasn't? What if you were like almost done reading? That would be really sad.
Horrible.
Yeah.
So our last question for the night for you guys actually comes from the audience again. So Robin Morricone asks, oh, where'd it go? They ask, what is the best tip you could give someone who is starting out and doesn't have an audience yet?
I would say, tips are hard. I have more sympathy, but you got to keep doing it. If you're starting out, you have so many bad things to write. You have to get right down to them. You have so many terrible things. So you have to keep doing them. Because think about all the terrible things you've written already, and you know that it's like you're only just starting out. So you have to keep doing them. You have to keep reading, you have to keep writing. I guess that's a tip. You can't really worry about an audience, I think. I think you just have to go, and if there's other artists who speak to you, you can try to be near them and try to learn from them and try to get comfort from them. Those are the tips. There's not like a good easy tip. There's not a shortcut. It's really hard. No one's paying attention, which feels painful. All of you have excellent taste. Obviously, all of us know what the best literature is, and none of us are making it. We know that what we do at our best is still not nearly as good as we want it to be. And you just have to stay in that space. It's hard. I have a lot of sympathy for it.
Yeah. That's a good question. That's a good answer too. You know, life is our audience. Life is our audience. There is no set audience, and set audiences are great, but life is our audience, you know, and you're part of it. Remember, it's this total sphere called life. We're in that total sphere, and that includes everything you could ever imagine and beyond. And Elon Musk is not gonna finish it. It's not gonna touch the limits and the boundaries. It's infinite. So as much as cool as he is, so that's how it is. So if it's a pencil you want to write about, or you just want to scratch a piece of paper, or if you want to write a fast poem for a homeless woman on the street and give it to her on a little piece of paper, or read it to her, or if you want to go to a principal and say, I got poems for your students, you don't know me, and it's okay, but I wrote them for your school. Boom, there it is. Or you just want to meditate and take in that morning without any ideas in your head. That's the most difficult thing for us that like to think so many things in so many seconds, and we just can't wait to get to the next second to think more things and create new things. But actually, it's all in that quiet moment of your life. It's in that quiet moment. Your audience is infinite in that quiet moment. You are totally alive in that quiet moment. And that is the poem right there. If you want to write something down, you can. So those are the kind of the variables. It's that quiet moment of all life, which is the poem you're in and you have. And there's the thinking, conceptualizing, experimenting on any matter, that any way you want to do that, and freely, without any sense of boundaries and restrictions or rules. And then there's the formal production line that me and Lemony got to deal with.
So we did, however, slightly lie to you, because we do have one final essential question for both of our judges, but I'm going to turn to Mr. Herrera first and ask who you selected as the winner for the Subnivean Awards in poetry, and if you might say a few words about the winning poems.
I hope I got it right. The winner is, ladies and gentlemen, people of the world, Laureate Holguin. How's that? For her beautiful poem, Breaking Out on Clinton Street. Did I get it right? Did I get it right? It's a great poem. It has many voices, has many movement. It moves so much, many rhythms, and it has a fading. It has various layers. There's the poem, there's the topography, there's the map, there's the pennies and the bullet, and you are gyrating in that poem, and all those items are part of the poem, and they're saying something about Clinton Street and something about the life of the people on those streets. And there's different ways of speaking, and there's a cha-cha-cha, there's rhythms, there's salsa, there's music, and there are real stories being told and real voices. So I take off my hat to the winner. Muchas gracias. Take off my hat. Muchas gracias. Beautiful poem, amazing poem. Very gifted and almost impossible poem to write if you set yourself up to write it. But if you write it, it comes out free like this one, full of talent, joy, discovery, people, truth, history, music, and voice.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor. I'm like tearing up. I feel the same way about your poem, so it's an honor.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
So, Mr. Handler, who is our fiction winner and what inspired you to pick this story as your top choice from among 3 incredibly strong works?
They were all really strong. I know that is like the standard judging line to say, oh my goodness, you were all really good and it was really hard to choose. And it was really hard to choose. I really admire about all of them at once that all of you felt so ready to dive fiercely into things that are going on right now. All of you in some way, I think all those stories in some way were like kind of tapping at the edge of the corporate juggernaut of the culture of late capitalism that is running all of us over like a bulldozer in the street. And so it makes me happy to think of all of those stories standing up and resisting that. But I know also that as I do that, it's like now I'm just extending suspense, so it's making it terrible. But Zach Swiss is the winner. I find his story elegantly readable. It's super thought-provoking. And I thought he did a wonderful job kind of juggling many ideas at the same time. So my hat is off to Mr. Swiss. But my hat, I'm not wearing a hat, so let's pretend I have 3 hats and I've taken them all off, one for each of the finalists because they were all really great. The winner is Mr. Swiss.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Hey, so I think that wraps us up for tonight. I want to say thank you so much to both of our amazing superstar judges who graced us with their presence and let us hear all the thought-provoking, interesting advice that they had to tell us. May it help us all continue our journeys in publishing or writing or wherever we're going. And I also want to say thank you to our amazing leaders and finalists, and of course the audience. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your additional questions, things that we could have never thought to ask. And I will hand it over to Angel.
I'm going to echo that thanks. Everyone was super great tonight. It was so good meeting all of you and getting to hear your works. Like, seriously, tonight was so amazing. To our raffle winners from tonight, we'll be reaching out with an email to ask you for the best addresses to send your prizes to. And once more, thank you again, everyone, and have a great night.
Yeah.